Lester Gasper's house where he had his cow barns and his pasture out there on Quonset Street. And a little bit further over to the left side, you can see the back of the old Brown School. So all this field in the foreground is today the houses around the circle that is Chipman Road.
Okay, when we talk Lester Gasper, we're talking Hannah Village Apartments.
That's correct.
These days. That's about where his house sat.
That's
right
exactly where it sat.
On the village there. And you were naming some of these greenhouses. Among them were the Glines and the Caldwells and Pembrokes, I believe.
Pembroke's was down, they were down behind where Flair Cleaners is today, down and back there, down toward Round Pond.
And then there was the Freemans.
They were across Dodge Street over near where the Beverly Plaza is. They were in there.
Kidders?
Kidders was back over by Ellsworth Avenue and Quonset Street, back toward Cherry Hill.
Yeah. And they all were in more or less friendly competition, would you say, with each other?
I really don't know. I guess probably they were. I know the Glines and the Caldwells, I think, were related somewhere back along.
I see. Okay, and this picture, as we said, dates from 1950.
That's about March of 1950, according to the information that came with it.
Okay. And we're really indebted to all the people that contributed these pictures.
Goes without saying.
I see Robert Lovett.
Robert Lovett, yes.
Photo.
Robert Lovett was very helpful in this whole project because he had a lot of photographs. He's sort of an unofficial North Beverly historian, and was at it long before I was.
Yeah.
And has written several nice pieces published by the Essex Institute.
Yeah, I really enjoy reading his pieces in the Beverly Times.
Excellent work.
Yeah. Please write some more.
Indeed.
Mr. Lovett. Now, 1947, Chipman Road area, and of course we see, I think, the Brown School there, if I'm not mistaken, Rich. Yeah,
you can see the back of it in the distance about in the center of the photograph, and again we're looking across the building, Route 128, and Cabot Street would be over on the left, Dodge Street would be out of the picture on the right, and Quonset Street, of course, beyond the school in the distance. The church, and the rest of it would be over in this upper left corner. But it shows you how that whole area where the greenhouses were was just absolutely stripped clean. You can see basically the foundation areas where the greenhouses were, those long rows, and pretty soon those will be knocked down and flattened out.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Do you suppose the large amounts of peat moss had anything to do with them building greenhouses in this area?
It might have. It might have. I know they tried to build a house across from ours there, and my father used to tell me this, and apparently there was so much peat there that the foundation began to settle even before they started to build the house. So they ended up building it further up Cabot Street, about 2 lots up, and nothing to this day ever has been built there.
Now in program 1 we showed what we call the boiler house, I believe it was, and you were telling me that it came from up in this area.
Yeah, that was the boiler house to the Glines greenhouses, which was over about behind where the Chinese restaurant is, in that area.
And this house was moved
down onto Cabot Street, opposite where Tremont Street comes out onto Cabot Street. It's a house today.
Yeah, as we see it today. Okay. Okay, now, the sawmill site in the Symmes neighborhood, I might add, Route 128 bridge. Theoretically, Rich, I was supposed to be up on top of the overpass here, but as I said a little while ago, it was just plain
suicide,
too dangerous to go across the street. So what I did was I stood under the overpass and took the picture.
You've got the angle about the same except for the height. The sawmill, as you can see in the foreground of the old picture, stood about where this new house, which is another one of the Smithson houses. Strangely enough, that one was built by itself on a spare lot away from any of the developments, because the developments were further up the street along Conant and in back there where Douglas Avenue and Priscilla Avenue and Old Farm Road are today. And this was just a vacant lot that just happened to be there, and that got snapped up, and lo and behold, a Smithson house appeared on it.
Wow.
But that was after the 128 construction.
Yeah. And right at this point here, where we're looking at this new house next to your old dwelling, is where that sawmill was. And
that's right. It was right where that new house stands.
And you tell me they had it rigged up so they could work rain or shine up there.
Yeah, they had it was like an open-fronted shed, almost like a lean-to, and there was a big piece of canvas that hung down the front, and if it rained, they could still work in there and build those forms. They had power saws and all kinds of things in there, and great truckloads of lumber used to come in day and night, and I used to be fascinated to watch them unload that, because they were on rollers, and the truck would back up real fast and stop, and the whole load would roll off and crash down onto the ground. It was amazing to watch that.
And here's your bedroom window.
There's my bedroom window.
You really
That's
had
right.
a box seat to the whole affair.
See it all. That's right.
You were also telling me that your mother and father took in boarders. That
Yeah.
There's people that worked on construction up there.
Yeah, one of the construction foremen lived there for, I think the better part of 6 months. And I can remember him very well. He had a mustache. And used to drive a Pontiac coupe and used to fly through the field across the street to get over to the Dodge Street Bridge. And I can see that cloud of dust going down that old cinder road today. Seeing him drive that old Pontiac coupe down there like the wind.
Those memories are forever, aren't
That's
they?
right.
Yeah. Okay, we move to the next photograph here, and say that we stay in sync here. Okay, number 46. This is a Route 128 bridge, overpass, Cabot Street. And we can see again in the Symmes house way off in the distance beyond the overpass.
Just barely see it, and you can see next to it the house that was moved across our front lawn to get it out of the way of Route 128. That big stucco house came from exactly in the site of the bridge and was moved along with the barn behind it across my father's front lawn so that they didn't have to cut the utility wires and go out into the street. And it just fit. I mean, you could reach out and touch it. In fact, it sat right in front of our house overnight. And I can remember looking out the front window, and you could reach out and actually touch it. It was less than 3 feet away.
Wow.
And everything was fine except it caved in my father's cesspool. And he wasn't too pleased about that.
Now, as you look at the 1991 versus 1947 picture here, little has changed right in this
That's right.
area.
It's almost exactly the same. There's virtually nothing changed whatsoever.
It's nice to see, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the few places it is.
Yeah. Now, you were telling me about some daredevil antics around in this area. And when I took this picture, I climbed right off to the left and up and around, and I got up onto the overpass here, which was a relatively simple task to do. But you were telling me when it was being built, there were some fun things to do up there.
Oh, shortly after it was built, we found out that when it snowed in the winter and the snow would pile up because of the wind blowing in a certain way, you'd have 10-foot drifts underneath these towers, and you could stand up on top of those towers and jump off into the snow and go right up to your shoulders in snow. And it was about a 20-foot drop.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my mother never saw us do that, or she would have been horrified.
A little hand-over-hand action here.
Yeah, that too. That railing across the bridge, there was a little granite piece that stuck out about a foot beyond it, out toward the outside, and it was not unknown for us on a dare to crawl around the outside of that railing and walk hand over hand all the way across the outside of it and then back in the other end. And, you know, if you'd have slipped, it would have been all over.
Yeah.
Unbelievable that you'd actually do something like that, but we did.
But how sad to grow old, though, huh?
Well, true.
Okay. Now, we're looking at the construction here of Route 128, perhaps around the Route 1A area, 1945 or 6.
Yeah, we're looking toward Gloucester in this view, down along the right-of-way, and you can see these bottom dumpers here, which are sort of antique-looking today, but they were probably state-of-the-art right after World War II. And they're grading, they're making the subgrade here for the highway, and looking toward Brimble Avenue. You can see the area in the far distance on the upper left side where the old Beverly Reservoir would have been, up where the music theater is today.
Yep. And Dunham Road, I think.
Dunham Road and all that. Yep.
Lodgepole
Dunham's
Ranch.
Castle, Lodgepole Ranch. Yep.
And that's quite an old-fashioned, or what we would call an old-fashioned road grader there.
Yeah, it
you see in
is.
the
It
picture.
is. It'd be real antique today if you could find one like that.
Okay. Next, again, another under construction photograph, 1946, Route 128, near, this time, Route 97.
Yeah, this is over in the area across the street, basically, from the house where I grew up, across from 620 Cabot. And we're looking toward Quonset Street. The church is in the distance on the left side. You can still see some of the greenhouses still standing, more over to the right in the background, and beyond that you can see the back of the Brown School. And of course in the foreground they're filling in the area where all the peat was taken out, where that was dug from that boggy area to make way for the tremendous embankment that was eventually built right there between Dodge Street and Cabot Street, which is probably 25 feet high.
That must have been a fun place to play, Rich, as a boy.
Oh, it was. I remember going over there when it was still a marsh and you could skate in the winter. I had a little pair of double runner skates that used to clamp on your shoes. I think you probably remember those. And, you know, skating around out there in the cattails and whatever. Sure.
Great. Okay. Here we have what was really the first big industry to come along into the newly constructed 128 area. This was BOMAC, as it was known then, of course.
BOMAC Laboratories, that's right.
Yep. And with the building today, we can still see it. It hasn't changed all that much.
That's right. The original building is still there right on the corner, and then, of course, they've added to it. It's like Topsy. It's grown off in every direction, and they've pretty much filled that whole area there.
Yeah. And of course, as we move further south on 128, this is just the beginning.
This is the beginning. This actually is, yeah, you're right. That is the furthest east that the electronics business has gotten. Beyond this, it becomes rural again, all the way down to Rockport.
Yep. This picture here, the old photo we're looking at, is dated mid-1950s. So we're looking probably almost 40 years here, difference between the old and the new.
That's right.
Okay. Well, now we get into some of my favorite photographs. These aerial shots, I love them. They just you can see just so much and talk about so much.
Yeah,
and this
fascinating.
This is Wenham Lake that we're looking at, perhaps along Enon Street, and it's a relatively new one, dated 1958. What do you think?
Well, it shows you a lot of things. It shows you the area, first of all, in the foreground, down here in the lower right corner, in this arch where the water meets the shore, was where the big ice houses used to be, hard up against this embankment. And you can still go into the woods here today, and you can find big concrete abutments still sticking up out of the grass and the trees in there. And that's where the escalator was that lifted the ice blocks up from the surface of the lake up into the ice houses themselves, and there were 3 or 4 of those there by the looks of what's still left there.
Metropolitan Ice Company, was it?
That was one of them, and I guess over the years there were 4 or 5 others in there. At the time, Metropolitan was the last one, I believe.
And further out, we see...
Further out, yeah, you can see Enon Street, of course, going left to right. That's the first thing you see, and that's the area where McDonald's is and where that new shopping center is today. And across the street is where the new Super Stop and Shop would be today.
Commodore can be seen.
Commodore, that whole area there, which of course was Robinson's Fried Clams before it was the Commodore. And then back in behind that, somewhat more of an angle, but again basically left to right, is the Boston and Maine Railroad, the Eastern Division, which at that time still went as far as Portsmouth.
And you were saying there was a railroad spur that came in here.
That's right. There used to be a spur track come off the main line just beyond the North Beverly Depot and crossed over, actually crossed Enon Street and went into the area about where McDonald's is today, and served to load all the sidings where the ice houses were.
From there, the ice went probably into Boston?
Into Boston. In the old days, it went all over the world. Certainly not with these ice houses, but the older ice houses up in Wenham back in the last century shipped ice all over the world, and it was supposed to be the purest ice in the world. It had that reputation. It was extremely sought after.
I'm amazed today because as I drive by there, going back and forth to work, I very rarely see it frozen over in the wintertime, to the extent where you would want to...
Yeah, where you'd want to cut ice, where you could even get out there with men and horses. I think the winters basically haven't been as cold lately as they were back then.
And of course, too, the mixture of water, there's the Ipswich River water coming in from the canal, and the Longham Reservoir water empties into the lake.
So you always get more turbulence.
Yeah, it is no longer pure Wenham Lake water,
no.
as we used to know it.
No, not at all.
Okay. Another aerial view, Rich. Love them. Here we're looking at perhaps an early 1920 photograph, and this is the famous Sam celebration put on by the United Shoe.
And people have asked what Sam stood for. Well, I don't think it stood for anything, but I've been told that it was named after 2 gentlemen, Sam Torrey, who was a doctor, and Sam Gently, who was an undertaker, and they were both prominent citizens back in the early days of the century, and I understand that's how it got its name. They apparently had something to do with its founding. But anyway, the picture shows the midway, if you want to call it that, that they used to have here at these annual events. And they were about where the tennis courts of the United Shoe Country Club are today, right there on McKay Street. And they had games of chance, and they had rides for the kids, and they had daredevil acts and all sorts of things. I think there's a tower here way about in the center where I understand they used to have horses would dive into a tank of water off of these things and that sort of thing.
You talk to any old-timer today, And this is the one thing that they seem to all remember with great fondness as the
That's right.
annual Symmes that came
That's
to
right.
Beverly.
It's way before my time. I certainly don't remember it, but you're right. I've heard it all my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, this was a really the proceeds, the profit, if any, were given over to Beverly Hospital. I received some of the profits.
That's what I understand.
And also there was a Shoe Relief Association, I believe. It was really for the betterment of the people of the city, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Proceeds. Yep. Okay. Sam. Still get another aerial view. Now we're looking at the North Beverly Depot area, about 1946, Rich.
This is interesting because it shows something that it's been almost impossible to find pictures of, and that's the Quonset Huts that were up there, built after the war. Basically, they were built in 3 locations throughout Beverly. There was the ones here in North Beverly up by the depot. There was some down on Cabot Street about where the First National Store was later built, and which is now where Delta Electronics is, right down there by the Balch Playground. And there was another set of them down off of
Cedar Street?
well, down in the area, down around Hurd Stadium, in that area.
Yep.
But try and find a picture of them today, because it seems like no one took pictures of those. They were simply brought back from the military. They were Quonset Huts designed by the armed forces for use during World War II as temporary buildings. Basically a big piece of corrugated metal with wooden ends, and there were 2 families in each one of them, one in each end. And there were, there's about 8 of them show up here. I guess there were about that many up there.
Yep.
And they lasted, 4 or 5 years, maybe not even that long, and just sort of provided extra housing for GIs coming back from the war before some of these